Sunday Baroque Conversations is made possible by the Friends of Sunday Baroque and is produced at WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Suzanne Bona. Thank you for listening. Don't miss an episode of Sunday Baroque Conversations. Subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a review. If you want to find out where you can listen to our weekly show, visit our website, sundaybaroque.org, for a station list and our 24/7 stream. Again, that's sundaybaroque.org. Harpsichordist, organist, and conductor Eric Milnes has shared his passion and expertise for Baroque music in concert halls and festivals across the globe. Graduate of Columbia University and the Juilliard School of Music, the native New Yorker has earned critical acclaim for his recordings with New York Baroque of music by Salomon Rossi, a Jewish composer in the court of the Duke of Mantua, and many other projects. Eric Milnes is also artistic director of Burlington Baroque in Vermont, founded in 2024 to present historically informed performances to Burlington, Vermont, and its region. And Eric Milnes joins me on Zoom to talk about his life and music. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we get into your many professional accomplishments as a musician and specifically into Burlington Baroque, I would like to know how you started in music. What was your first instrument, and how did you meander your way to the harpsichord and organ?
That's exactly what I did. But there are 6 of us in my family, and my parents were very musical. It was not my father's career, but as a clarinetist and a singer, he was always involved. And my mother was a church musician as well as other professional pursuits. So we were raised in the church, and we were all singing and recruited to play whatever we could pick up, and particularly to be engaged in a great tradition of sacred music that certainly was centered on composers like Bach and Handel. This was our recreational music, and the 4 of us children all studied and practiced and played chamber music, and were the beneficiaries of great music programs in our schools, for which I would like to make an enormous plug right now, that we were in high schools doing B minor mass excerpts and Beethoven 5. I was a bass player, quite amateur student, but at this point in my life, I very much like to point out those educators of our public school programs that made that so exciting for us. And it was quite a large contingent from my high school class that went on to have careers. And being proximate to New York City helped, of course. But those educators made it possible for us to view a happy way into the musical life, which is not the case in all of, our homes. And then, of course, each new Telefunken Bach recording that came out, we had them upon release. And Hogwood, first real notable period instrument, Messiah, hit our home like a earthquake. And for me, coming out of a pretty mainstream piano training background, it didn't take long for me. And then as I became a church musician, as soon as I could, to be inviting the New York period instrument players into my church. It seemed for many years that I was the youngest one in the room, but I started doing period instrument performances when I was 18. And of this great repertoire, and haven't looked back. New York was a great launching place. At the time in the 80s, it was rocking and rolling up and down the East Coast. I remember one of our reviews, it might have been Alan, it might have been Cousin, that described our band as the I-95 Baroque Orchestra in the times, but Yeah, it was that time when CDs were being introduced, and
Mm.
therefore the entire repertoire and far more than had been recorded on LP had to be produced on CD. And with the new digital technology, and of course the wave of great recordings flowing from ensembles in Europe for us in New York and Boston, really, it was a very active and exciting time. I played in the first performance of Bach's John Passion in New York City. That was it was the first time oboe de caches had been that Steve Hammer and Mark Schachman were able to perform Bach on those instruments. That was exciting for a 19-year-old. I remember the first Messiah in New York City at St. Thomas Fifth Avenue. Jerry Hancock directed. He was my organ teacher directing the St. Thomas Choir Men and Boys with the first Baroque orchestra in New York live. And golly, as a young person, I had to get up front and say, who
Mm.
are these people? And can I please see these instruments? And I
Yeah.
remember approaching all of those people I became, to know well and collaborate with into the future. But to me,
Mm.
they just looked like, um, gods, playing
Right.
Baroque oboes, etc., traversos in front of me. And I remember going up to, I think, I don't know, it might have been, it doesn't matter. Who are you? How, and one of them said, I think Phil Levin's the contractor. Go talk to him. So that was kind of my introduction to the community.
Mhm.
And I became very busy with them, both as a director and a collaborative artist,
Mhm.
through New York Collegium all those years, Boston Early Music Festival performances, and then was recruited out to play with Jeff Thomas, American Bach soloists, and then to direct Portland Baroque Orchestra numerous occasions, which led me from, my New York activities to playing around the country, really, and then directing.
Mhm.
And one thing led to another, Long
Mhm.
Island Church led to Juilliard and Manhattan Period Instrument activities. And that
Mhm.
led to colleagues in the network inviting me here and there in Portland and Seattle, and then to Montreal, and 20 years with the Montreal Baroque Orchestra, and then with my partner Mélisande Corriveau founding L'Harmonie des Saisons up there. We're in our 15th year.
Mhm.
Uh, and after those 15 seasons and touring and bringing the ensemble to Europe and South America and Asia, I relocated myself from New York to Montreal sort of permanently
Mhm.
and looked for a place across the border that might be interested in period music making on
Mhm.
this side. And lo and behold, I discovered Burlington, Vermont, which is a
Mhm.
very cool place
Mhm.
and a lot of deep enthusiasm for the gesture.
Mhm.
But as one might surmise, not a lot of access to the artists in the field, the singers and instrumentalists who thrive in the period um, movement,
Mhm.
have don't settle here. It's not,
Right.
has not
Right.
been a busy place for period musicians. Not ironically, but interestingly, my old longtime colleague Scott Metcalf, who directs Blue Heron uh, in Boston and was my violin leader for 30 years. I mean, we started working as kids, basically. He's from here and at
Oh.
Burlington, and his parents were uh, Bill and Liz Metcalf, were two of the few people in this region um, playing on historical instruments and doing chamber music with colleagues. And that was sort of the extent of it. And when I asked him about Scott about Burlington, he said, absolutely, that region is wide open for
Mhm.
development.
Mm.
They have a symphony, they have an opera company. Interestingly, there's numerous avocational choirs of various levels and interests. But from my experience, way beyond proportionate to the population, the number of people with enthusiasm for singing here. And so I discovered that, wow, nobody's doing 17th and 18th century music on period instruments in Burlington, Vermont. And it's a regional center. People travel from across the state to all kinds of events, musical and otherwise, in Burlington. And no one's doing that. What was different for me was that, you know, my ensembles north of the border are an 80-minute drive to Burlington. So, you know, we can bring our whole team, orchestra, choral, and soloists, as an extension of our tours. If we mount a project and perform it in Montreal, Quebec City, Ottawa, and our home base, a fantastic abbey in the region, then it's relatively easy for us to add additional performances in Vermont, having already rehearsed and you know, funded the project. And it was simply, in the 2 years that I've been active at this, combining the avocational singers here and the professional singers here with our team, and branding that Burlington Baroque. The number of components to it, it would have seemed rather adventurous, risk-taking to simply launch a festival, but I did it after 4 Messiahs, 2 St. John Passions, a 4 Requiem with period instruments, projects that all sold out. And being a new venture, a new brand, 6 sold out performances with period instruments and hip, you know, historically informed performance approach, all selling out, told me that this town is ripe for a festival. And having participated over the decades in, you know, Berkeley Bach and Boston, you know, festivals, most particularly with the Montreal Festival, Montreal Baroque, which I was a founding director for, I've learned a few things about how to do it and how not to do it. And so I was really happy to kind of initiate and implement from the ground up Baroque Festival, having learned some things, and with a great team in Burlington, drawn from these incredibly energetic and ambitious musicians that also want this in their lives, both as singers and the team around the board and the volunteers and the hosts and the donors and the whole, you know, what it takes came together quite quickly within a year.
Yeah.
And of course, we couldn't have known if 47 people were going to come here Monteverdi Vespers on the first, you know, for the first time on period instruments. The 5 performances were all sold out.
Wow. Well, how big is the venue? How big is the venue?
It seats about 300, and then we're, you know, 50 odd performers. So the room is quite packed, but it's a nice room. The Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Burlington. And after having established ourselves in that venue for the first year, we now anticipate how we're going to branch out to different interesting venues in the city, and to move to villages like wonderful towns like Middlebury and Woodstock, and just kind of spread it out, because the audience is here and they know the difference and they love it.
Yeah. So I have a question. So you talked about, you've alluded to this a little bit, but the singers, the chorus is not necessarily a professional, full-time professional group. They're amateur talent, but nevertheless amateurs. So how is it different working with amateur musicians than from working with professionals, and how is it the same?
Yeah. In the festival chorus, there are kind of three legs to the stool. The professionals of l'harmonie des Saisons that come down with me from Montreal, that we've been working together for ages. Then there's a cadre of professional or semi-professional um, singers in and around Burlington, and they're a very important part of it. And most excitingly, the amateurs who are, musically functioning on a high, I would say, a professional level, as you know, that there's really no limit to what you can teach talented amateurs within certain restrictions, but they work hard. They rehearse a lot, and we do a full immersion weekend kind of thing, and they live in it. So for me, it's a very familiar scenario in a lot of my work, that a lot of that enthusiasm and the strength of the support can come from motivated avocational singers who don't otherwise have access to this kind of activity, and they want it, and they're not gigged up. It's not old hat. They're excited about the newness. They work hard. They're chosen carefully. We auditioned every one of them. They prepared, and I say it's not unfamiliar to me because from my first professional directing out of the church where I started, it was always combining amateur enthusiasts with the professional leaders, section leaders, and the balance, if right, and if the professionals are chosen carefully, both for style considerations and for their collegial manner and kind of community talent for nurturing the relationships with their colleagues in the section. Again, these are small vocal ensembles. Not really a fan of the big chorus for this rep. And a lot of the music that I've been engaged in is one on a part, both vocally. And most all of the Bach recordings I have done is a one voice and a part. So it's translating a little bit to involve this very important cohort in, I mean, they don't get to do this often, so they bring a great energy to it. And as I say, I find that, I mean, if they're chosen carefully, I find there's no limit to their aptitude to, learning the style and the imperatives about how we do this music. And there seems to be no limit to how much they want to learn and what they can achieve. You put these teams together, work hard, give them the information they need, and cut them loose. And it's worked for me in New York. It worked for me at Trinity Cathedral, Portland, Oregon, Trinity Consort for those years, and in various groups up here in Montreal. That's a skill, no question, that everybody feel valued, everybody feel equally contributing, and that energy can be translated into motivated creators and facilitators and boards and donors. And I mean, they have extraordinarily diverse professional lives that they bring to how do you build a festival, as far as promotion, marketing, communications. Couldn't do it without them. I mean, my partner Melly and I are a staff of two. And yet this incredible team in development and production and promotion and personnel and scheduling and hosting, they take it and they run, and they bring their sophisticated professional skills to that side of it. And as musicians are not necessarily always the most effective or efficient at that. So it's great to watch them blossom into a festival. And
Mm,
it's just great. It's one of the greatest joys of my life to see
mm,
people who, like me, at a certain age, just looking at the liner notes of Leonhard Consort and looking at those people and, wanting to be one of those people. And they all that they're in for that. They
mm,
want to be doing this.
mm.
And we just finished a tour of 6 performances at Messiah, and that's rigorous.
No.
That's really putting both feet in, and
Yeah.
they came out strong as they went in. And in fact, performing at a higher level than when they went in. Every time they sing with the leaders in the field,
Yeah.
professional singers and instrumentalists, their level rises.
Sure. Yeah.
And I liken it to how can you get your serve better if you don't play with better people?
Hmm.
And it
Absolutely.
absolutely works
Yeah.
for them. And then at the same time, you choose your professional mentor um, team very
Yeah.
carefully, that they're going to be inclusive and welcoming and respectful and teaching all the time. And
Mhm.
then you have your team in place.
Cool. Well, congratulations. Well done. I have been speaking on Zoom with harpsichordist, organist, and conductor Eric Milnes about his career as a Baroque music specialist and his work with Burlington Baroque in Vermont. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.